because he's on an air, and that he, both of us have websites that really articulate and give more detail about what we're doing. In fact, mine has videos, etc., of students engaged in these very activities. But I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if it works. Can everybody see that? I will make it a slideshow. Can you see that? What? Continue to share. Is everybody? Yes? Yes. Okay, good. So we're going to talk about how, why, and how to teach storytelling. I like to start off, though, with a story. Um, that helps kind of just jump us in. So, a quick story. Once there was an old woman, and she had been walking for a long, long time. And finally, she came to a town. And she went to the first door of the first house and knocked on it. And a young woman answered it and said, "What do you want, old woman?" And the woman said, "Well, I've been traveling a bit and I'm just hoping that you could spare, I'm very hungry and tired, if you could spare a morsel of food or some drink." And the young woman slammed the door in her face and said, "We have nothing here." So the old woman went to the next house. And she got the same answer. And then the next house and the next house and the next house. And finally, she had gone through the whole town and no one would spare any food and just slammed the door in her face. And she just sat down on the side of the road and tried to rest. Then she heard a noise and she looked up at in the entrance to the town. There was this galloping horse, a huge, beautiful black horse. And on top of the horse was a very handsome young man clothed in a nice cloak. And then doors opened up, windows opened up, and everybody from the town came rushing out with jugs of wine and platters of their finest cheese and meats. And they're clamoring over each other, fighting to see who could serve this young, handsome man. Now, the old woman, as you could imagine, was not very happy about this, but she waited until everybody left. And she went up to this young, handsome man on his beautiful black horse. And she said, "Oh, sir, excuse me, are you the king?" And the man said, "The king? No, why would you say that?" She said, "Well, because when I came to this town, no one would spare me a morsel of food, and they just shut their doors right in my face. You come in, you don't even have to ask. They just give you everything. What's your name?" And he said, "Oh, that. My name is Story. And wherever I go, people want to see me because they want to hear what I have to say. And you, why are you treated so bad? What's your name?" And she said, "Well, my name is Truth. And wherever I go, people slam their doors. They don't want to see me. They don't want to hear from me at all." And Story thought for a minute and he said, "I have an idea. You see this horse?" And she said, "Yes, I do." "Do you see this cloak?" She said, "Yes." He said, "Come up on my horse and hide behind my cloak, and we'll travel the world together. And when I get food, you'll get food. When I get wine, you'll get wine." And that's why, my friends, to this day, inside every story, there's a little bit of truth. So that story, thank you. I love that story. I learned it from an Irish storyteller named Claire Murphy. Look her up. She has great stories. In that story, to me, is the essence, even though it's a folktale, and what we're going to work on more is what personal stories that teachers have or students have and how to use personal stories. I still feel that story illustrates why stories are important. I mean, there is very clear evidence that we are storytelling animals. And this ancient technology of telling stories is so essential to our students' well-being and our own, especially as we enter these new technological area. So hopefully in this 30 minutes, you'll begin to develop an idea for a short personal story of your own. And you'll learn how to structure learn a structure for how to teach storytelling in the classroom and reflect on the impact of stories in the classroom. So that's our goals for today. I already introduced myself, or Anna did, But one thing that is, I'm trained as a storyteller and an actor and performer and voiceover artist. So story is essentially, I like to think I live in the world of story. I'm no longer teaching full time, but I was a fourth through eighth grade English teacher in the United States and a drama teacher for close to 40 years. But now I work as a teacher, trainer, and consultant. My partner Joe Voigt was unable to be here. He's on an airplane right now going to Japan for a project. So he gave me this quote, though, as why he wanted to, what he wanted to share, that stories familiarize the strange and mystify the familiar, from Toni Morrison. That's our contribution from Joe. So our agenda is we're going to discover. So the first step is, how do you discover a story? How do you structure a story? How do you, or when I say you, I guess I'm talking about in the classroom, your students. How do they draft it, revise it, and perform? And you notice I'm using the word perform. Of course, these strategies can be used for written stories, but I believe so strongly in the power of the oral story in the classroom and in the world. That's what this is designed for, but of course you can use it for writing. So I'm going to give you one technique of the millions that are possible about discovering stories. It's a technique I've used with students who are brand new to English, because my job as a seventh grade teacher was our newcomer program. Students did not speak English yet. I had 15 different languages in my classroom, and we used this approach, rasas. Rasas are ancient, 2,000-year-old from Sanskrit, and they are the essence or emotion in storytelling. Rasas, it's a theory that was put together, like I said, 2,000 years ago, that presents that art, particularly performance, so dance, theater, story, aims and music aims to evoke an emotion or a rasa. Rasa technically translates to essence. And the goal of stories is not just to entertain or communicate, but to communicate really deeper truths. This is from the ancient tradition of Hindu, of to connect with divine energies and transcend everyday emotions. So let's look through the rasas. I have to minimize my, there I am. Okay. Uh, we have 8 essential rasas. You can read them yourself, but I'm going to start and say some of them. Shringara is pleasure, and it's like love. It's the erotic, and just sensual pleasure. Rauja might be considered the opposite. It's rage, fury. Karuna is compassion, sadness. But I like the compassion part of it. Bhayanaka is panic, fear. Abduta is awe, but it's big awe, like it's wonder at the miracle of the universe. Wow, as my students would say. Vira is the heroic, courage. And if you do yoga, you might have these terms might come familiar, like Vira Vinasya, the warrior pose. Hasya, laughter, playfulness. Bibasta, disgust. So these are the 8 essential rasas. Once students are familiar with them, and again on my website I show ways to get students to really understand these. Whoops, oh okay. I then will choose one and tell another story. So here's another story. I'm going to choose the rasa of fear, Bhayanaka. This is a story about a time I was most afraid in my life. My father saved me. The end. So I do that. If we're in a live workshop, I would say, any questions? But I do that. I tell my students, do you have any questions? Because what I consider is that questions, and that's a picture of my father after he saved me. We discover our stories through questions. One partner might say, this is a story about, so this is a story about a time I was most afraid, my father saved me, right? And the other partner drives the story by asking questions. So questions might be, what happened? Where did it take place? Where were you? Or, why were you afraid? But I've reduced it to these five essential questions. What did you want? What stopped you from getting what you wanted? Where did this happen? What did you decide to do? What was the result? Those are the essential questions. I often think a story can be reduced to this formula. And of course, not every story is this going to fit, but most do. This is a story about X who wants Y, but can't get it because of Z. This is a story about Romeo and Juliet who want each other, but can't get it because their parents hate each other. It took place in fair Verona. And the result and the decision is, in a sense, the story, right? They decided to come up with this plan, and the result was tragic. So it's, again, the questions. I often think of a story as a response to a series of unasked questions. So these are what we call our story beats: the desire, the want, the problem, the conflict, the setting. Location is very important in a story. The decision, the result. So again, we discover through rasas. We start working with these concepts. These story beats help us structure the story. You can structure your story through these five beats. Again, I'm going to go back to the beats: desire, problem, setting, decision, result. You can structure it, and you consider in which order you will reveal each beat of your story. Uh, the story and truth story I told in the beginning, I began it with describing the person walking. The problem was already evident. She couldn't get any food. But you could also start a story anywhere. In fair Verona, we set our scene. So Shakespeare starts Romeo and Juliet through setting. And imagine how each beat could begin your story. You ask the students to think about, well, what's more compelling? So again, they're discovering through the rasas, they're moving through questions. And this is one thing, I'm going to ask you to do this anyway. I'm going to go back to the rasas. I want you to choose one rasa just for practice, and this is going to be just for yourself, is then think of a sentence. This is a story about a time. So here are the rasas again. And see if you can choose one. And again, this is a rushed workshop. Obviously, you'd spend a lot of time with this, right, in the classroom, asking students to discover. So I'm going to, because I'm conscious of your time, just say, imagine you did that. You have a one sentence story. This is a story about a time that I was sitting in a bar and a monk came and sat next to me, which is a true story for me when I worked in Cambodia for a year. Another time I'll tell it. Then the student would find a partner and tell their story. So I would find Anna and I'd say, hey, I want to tell you about this time. And I just would ramble it, not worry about, it's not performance. It's just like we tell stories all the time. And then we would tell it. I just like to have, when students tell a story, I like to have slides that don't have words. So then the partner would ask them a series of questions to help them even flesh it out further. So that's one step, okay? Then I want to move into this other idea. So again, we're speeding through. We have story grammar. Uh, all stories, the grammar, the stuff that you have that can make it sing is you can have action, you can have description, you can have dialogue, or you can have commentary. I think most of them are self-evident, except commentary. Commentary is when the storyteller basically comments on the story. So if I'm telling the story about the time my father saved me, yes, I was only 9 years old in this event, but I might then in the middle of the story say, boy, that reminded me of what it was like to be 9 years old. That's suddenly me, Richard, as an adult, commenting on the story. My storytelling teacher, when I studied storytelling, said commentary is be very careful with it. Don't overuse it. So, how do we use that? One partner begins to tell their story again. So you find another partner. It could be a story about walking to work today. I got on my, how did I get to work today? I got on my bicycle, I started bicycling, and somebody would interrupt me and say, action. And I have to continue with an action. Oh, I'm bicycling, I got to a corner, I stopped at a stop sign, and then I went across, and somebody say description. And I'd have to then start describing. The stop sign was red. Just keep on, you're stopping the scene, you're describing what you see, what you hear, what you feel, what you smell. And then they might say action again. And then they might say dialogue. And then I met somebody and they said to me, Richard, why are you bicycling to work today? It's raining. You forgot your rain jacket. Oh no, I say. And then they might say action. So I got back on my bicycle and I started riding back to my house. It doesn't have to be a good story, but it's just getting you into the idea that you can manipulate this. You can make decisions. When do you have action? This is what we call the story grammar. Okay. Those are the first steps that we go through. Now we have, just have to check my notes, we have the discovery through rasa. We have the structure through the beats. We have the drafting through this story grammar. And we're going to go through them again, so you'll see them. And then we need to revise after we draft. So we're following that process. And one of my favorite ways to revise, and I was on a podcast recently and somebody said, okay, you have, hundreds of activities that you do in your classroom. If you could only do one, what would it be? Well, it would be this, tableau. A tableau, best way to do it is through pictures. Frozen pictures of moments in time. So this is a group of students, for instance, these are pre-service teachers that I was training in the country of East Timor, Timor-Leste. And I worked there off and on for 4 years. And I told them a folk tale, and they created these tableaus of moments, and they're frozen. This is from a workshop at TESOL last year of participants doing tableau. And this is back to the students in East Timor. They are frozen moments. They're the essential moments. I often would say, choose 5 scenes from your story. Set them up in a tableau. And this is from a TESOL workshop this year. So basically what happens is the students find a group or you assign a group, and they choose one story. This was you in the classroom. Everybody gets to tell their story. This was written for a workshop, but one person goes at a time. And so, say it's my story. I would help. My group would help me create these frozen moments from that story, uh, and I would not be in it. They would create the frozen moment, and I would see it. So, in the first story I told of the truth and story, somebody might create a tableau of the woman walking, and somebody else, the next tableau would be maybe the young woman opening the door and the old, yelling at the old woman, but they'd be frozen. There'll be a variety of ways of displaying it. And what these are is a human tableau. I often call it a human slideshow, if there's more, and scene, scene, scene. And this would help me revise. Maybe I'll get a visual picture and I'll say, oh, I have another idea. So it's a revision process. And then you tell the story again after that tableau. How did it impact you? So this process might take a week in the classroom, not 30 minutes like today, if that makes sense. And we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end. Okay. So then they'd perform again the story. And again, because I have done this for academic writing, not so for students who were working at a fairly sophisticated level of English, you could actually do this not just for made up stories or true stories, you can do it for academic stories. We did tableaus of a piece of writing we read about food in World War One. So it's possible to use these tableaus for a variety of ideas. When students are telling their story to the class, I ask the rest of us, listeners, and this is a really good way of getting students to listen deeply to a story. So if you're looking for a listening activity, teach the rasas and ask students to say, which rasa does this story evoke and how and where? For instance, most stories, again, to just go back to Romeo and Juliet, it has all of this stuff in it. There's moments of fear. There's a lot of Shringara, but there's also rage and anger. So you might ask, well, where did you hear Raudra? Where did you hear Shringara? Where did you hear Hasya? And it's a really great way of a whole listening activity. What I find with all these activities I'm sharing with you, you can use independent of the storytelling process. So once students know rasas, you can just get a photo, say, what rasa is this? Why? And there is no right answer. What creates fear for one listener might actually create pleasure for another.
Слава Богу.
Isn't that interesting? I want to just add this one rasa that was added 1,000 years later. Uh, there was a monk who felt that the 8 rasas, so this is in the year 1000 AD, felt the 8 rasas were missing one component, peace, shanta. And I do believe that rasa is essential in our world. And it's nice to see that somebody figured that out over 1,200 years ago. Why can't we learn it now? So it's reflection time. This is what we did. We discovered through rasas. We structured through questions and beats. We drafted through grammar, meaning action, description, dialogue, and commentary. And we revised through tableau. So, we're at 7, or 5:28 your time, 7:28 my time. Uh, Anna, can we open it up for some questions?
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. It was amazing. It was very empowering, and for me personally, the person who has seen all that in person, right, in interaction, it was incredibly inspiring. I am absolutely sure, as much as to everyone who
I hope
attended
so. I
us,
know it's fast.
joined.
I just,
No, it's not fast. It's not fast. Really, I am absolutely sure that actually quite complicated things are put into very simple and intuitively felt concepts. So thank you so much for doing this great job for us, and I'm absolutely sure that we can all arm ourselves now with these beautiful terms and apply them in our classroom.
well,
So
yeah. Any, go ahead.
any any questions, any comments, please, you're welcome. You can raise your hands and you are open and you can start.
I think everybody's muted or, um,
I forcibly muted some of the people, so I put this magic spell. And okay, probably one while I see one person with a hand. Tracy, you're welcome.
Yes, I'm wondering if we could have access to the slide deck.
absolutely. It exists
Okay,
I think there's on both our websites. I didn't
okay,
put this particular one on it. I just modified it this morning for this presentation, but there are quite a few. There's one that we did at
okay,
TEFL. Plus, on my website, there are, uh, I basically threw out all these storytelling and drama activities with videos of my students doing them. So they're very, uh, it's basically my book. I didn't want to write a book. So I just made my website reflect that. And it's all free.
Okay,
I appreciate
thank
that.
you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Tracy. Anybody else? All right. Just one more feedback from me. What is rasa for me now? How I feel it. Okay, so this is about emotions. It's about mystery. It is about curiosity. It is about will to discover
Hmm.
the truth and the will to tell the truth. So it's about, there is a deep philosophical meaning in that, right? It is about something that is in the core of human relationship, uh, the need to communicate. It's about communication. So thank you,
And
Richard,
yes,
for
thank you.
bringing this incredible, I don't know, cosmic matrix in understandable, very understandable storytelling picture to all of us. Thank you so much. That
I'm
was amazing.
happy to join you. And I
Yeah,
hope to come in person someday and we can do an extensive workshop on this so people can really practice it and get it in their bodies. That would be my dream.
absolutely. I'm absolutely sure that we can make it one day, and this day is pretty coming soon. So it's not somewhere, like behind the mountains. So it's coming soon. So
That
yeah,
would give me so much Stringara pleasure.
absolutely, absolutely. So
And we need
Richard, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so
it.
much. That was
And
really
thank you
great. Great,
everyone for
very
taking your time to join us. And please check in and you can email us with any further, you can email me with any further questions or comments. And that's all on my website.
yeah.
Okay?
So thanks again. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us this early morning and creating this wonderful story for all of us. Thank you again.
Okay.
And we do not say goodbye because we're moving on, and we have one more um, workshop today. And our next speakers are Roxanna Senyshyn and Olga Demydenko. Roxanna Senyshyn is a PhD and Associate Professor of Applied Linguistics and Communication Arts and Sciences at Pennsylvania State University, United States. Her research focuses on transformative learning in language education, intercultural communication, and teacher development. She explores how educators can foster critical reflection, identify development, and inclusive pedagogy in multilingual contexts. And Olga Demydenko is an associate professor of Igor Sikorsky Kyiv Polytechnic Institute. So our long esteemed colleagues are going to talk today about virtual conversations, real impact, exploring intercultural learning between Ukrainian and United States students. So ladies, you are sharing the screen. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for supporting us. You're welcome. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Hannah, for introducing us. And it is, first of all, I would like to say that it is truly a great privilege to present today at the virtual convention. Deeply personal responsibility, I feel, because I'm originally from Ukraine and born and raised in Ukraine, educated in Ukraine. And it's also interesting to follow after Richard's wonderful talk about storytelling, because I think this presentation that Olga and I put together, it is a story. It's a story about our collaboration and story about virtual exchange project that we implemented in our classes. Let me see. Moving on to the next slide. Sorry. Thanks. I don't know why I cannot. Okay. So I'll tell a little bit about the project, and I'll invite Olga to join and to tell about herself, and also on her side, what were the motivations for this project. I'm at Penn State, and Penn State has a platform that provides opportunities for faculty in the United States, but also outside of the United States, to express interest, to collaborate virtually. Because as we know, mobility, international mobility is not something that is accessible to every student. I work with undergraduates at Penn State Abington, and it's only probably a very small percentage, I would say 2% of our students that have experience traveling during their undergraduate study to go abroad. In the United States, that percent is probably around 10%. So thanks to present-day technologies, we do have opportunities for very important human connection across the borders. So first of all, the idea behind these virtual conversations and virtual exchange projects is to support internationalization efforts. I'm sure the same applies to institutions in Ukraine. And that's why virtual exchange is important. And second is to foster language awareness, language learning practice, opportunities to those especially who are learning English in Ukraine, but also cultural awareness, because engaging in dialogue, we are learning about identities, we are learning about cultures, and practicing what it means to be a global citizen. And most importantly, why I was motivated, I really wanted to support both faculty and students in Ukraine during the time of war. So facilitating intercultural dialogue during this time, I think, is critically important. I research and look at the distance, how far we are from Kyiv, from Abington in Pennsylvania. So it's quite a distance, but we are united by a common purpose. And I think Richard talked about storytelling, and I thought that, the convention's theme this year, Rising Together, Teaching with Hope and Strength, this is exactly what you will see in how our students, through virtual conversations, they embodied those values in powerful and human ways. So as I mentioned, how Olga and I got connected, that was through Edge platform, that is through Penn State Global. And at the end of the presentation, I'll share information. If you are interested, you can submit your inquiry and you will be matched with a faculty member in Penn State, in the Penn State system. It is a large university spread out through the whole Pennsylvania. Olga, would you like to join and say a few words from your side about the motivation for the project? I know that Olga is. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, dear Roxana and dear colleagues. It's my pleasure and honor to be here today and to share our experience about this really inspiring and soulful project, because it's really more soulful for me as for the teacher. Actually, how we connected, I would I would tell you even more pre-story background of this, because I deal with academic mobility at our university. I'm responsible as a head of academic mobility office of this university, and we try to internationalize university in different dimensions, because for many, as you know, and as you see, we are a technical university, and the majority of students are male students, and they have really real difficulties in even participating in academic mobility programs, though we have over 100 projects open for everyone. But we have still limits caused by the martial law which is now in Ukraine. So we have to face this challenge and help students to develop internationally, even at home. So when our partners wrote to me about this possibility, we opened this project to all the faculties and all the specialties of our university. And I know that not only our faculty, but also other faculties participated and successfully participated in this project. As for me, I'm always open to something new, and I'm also associate professor of and translator, and I teach at the Department of Theory, Practice, and Translation of English, and teach culture studies to the students of linguistics. So we teach to future translators, and of course, culture studies is impossible to teach without real dialogue. It's precious to have the possibility to reach representatives of the countries of studied language, to know them better from inside. So to communicate and to know lifestyle, behavioral patterns, to worldview, and to share our experience, because it was also very important to share our thoughts and feelings about current situation in Ukraine, because it's also very important for us to disseminate truthful information. So this project also facilitated in this dimension. So Roxana.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I know we have limited time, but we'll be happy to answer with details when we have Q&A at the end. So a little bit more about the structure. What was this virtual exchange like? Because you know there are different forms, there are different ways. For English language, for language learning, usually these are dialogue sessions that are synchronous and opportunities for students to really engage in conversational practice. So a little bit about participants. On my side, US students, undergraduate students, there were 23 students who participated. We had more students on Ukrainian side. My students were enrolled in intercultural communication class and multilingual lives class. And all her students were enrolled in culture studies of English-speaking countries. So that was perfect match, we can say. About the format, we provided readings. On my side, I provided readings about Ukraine, Culturegram. Also, I recently published a book that is about, you may have an opportunity to hear, teaching English in Ukraine during the time of war. And there is an introductory chapter that I assigned my students to read. That introductory chapter gives ideas about Ukraine's history, socio-cultural environment, and many, many other different aspects. So introductory readings are important because they provide background information about country, culture, and lifestyle. Each US student was paired with 2 or 3 Ukrainian students. And at the beginning, when I told my students you'll have 2 or 3 conversational partners, you can imagine how silent the class was. Their reaction was, how is that? How are we going to manage it? 2 or 3 do we have? How many meetings do we have to have? And I told my students, no worry, be happy. It all is going to work really well. And because they will be as a team. If I tell you they'll meet with you as a team, you have to meet as a team. And things did work perfectly well. Discussion prompts were provided because you cannot just simply give them an idea. And because if you, in different fields, my colleagues in business, in physics, in engineering, they can assign something that's project-based learning, problem, solution. However, I thought for this project, it makes more sense for them to get to know each other on a personal level, making human connection, understanding where they live, who they are, what their student identities are, how active students are in their communities, as well as talk about popular culture, media, as well as recent events. And that, of course, means Russia's war against Ukraine. Students were provided initial contact, and my students, US students, had to initiate those conversations. And that was through email. And then they could decide whatever would be the app they would use for regular communication. 2 required meetings, synchronous meetings, where students had to complete. And it's actually good practice. The minimum meetings that you should implement if you do virtual exchange should be 2 or 3. And at the end of the project, students had opportunity to share in class, to do presentation and write reflections. Duration, how long does it take? Of course, because there are 2 required meetings and have to be a space in between the meetings. So it takes 4 to 5 weeks from the time that they are given information, they contact their conversation partners, they get in touch, they plan a meeting, they plan another meeting, and then engage in reflections. So it doesn't have to take the whole semester. And students in the United States at my university, we are commuter campus, all students have jobs, work. So it's really hard for them to manage projects that are longer than that. But that was a very much manageable project for them. Briefly about, because this is the project that is still in progress, we haven't analyzed our data yet. We're using Michael Byram's intercultural communicative competence as our theoretical framework for developing this project, but also we'll use it for assessment purposes. And when Hannah introduced me, she mentioned my work in transformative learning and how I apply that theory in as both assessment as well as pedagogical tool. So it is a very helpful theory to plan and think about intercultural dynamics, intercultural dialogue, because it speaks about how shift of perspective happens when we engage with different views, different viewpoints, and how dialogue is important and how reflection is important in that process. I'll speak about US students, and then Olga will contribute and talk about Ukrainian students, what were the learning outcomes for Ukrainian students, as well as highlight some of the commonalities. So for US students, I'll share some of the themes. You can see them here on the slide, and I'll share some of the quotes. First of all, what stands out, and this is just preliminary analysis, emotional engagement and empathy. And of course, because of the times that we live in. In fact, many students hesitated. They would ask me in class, is it okay to talk about the war? Is it okay to ask them these questions? And I told them, well, you don't start with these questions. You get to know your conversation partners, and then you'll see how comfortable it is for you to engage in these conversations. But they all engaged, and they reflected how important it was for them and how much it influenced and created that emotional connection. Deep understanding of the war's impact, because students talk about how not much in US media, especially the project was taking place in February, end of February, beginning of March. US media did not cover much about Russia's war against Ukraine, but students said that they could still see a lot of support. They knew that Ukraine is supported in its efforts and this fight. However, media wasn't covering that much. So these discussions were part of them. My students also reflected on privilege, how much privilege they felt to be where they are, and the safety and other aspects. Language and identity were important for discussion as well. They often expressed ideas such as Ukrainian students were not maybe confident in their English, but as I was looking just this morning in one of the reflections, a student said, at the very beginning, they did ask me what I thought about their English, and they were a little nervous. But I was like, are you kidding? Your English is so good. So they all complimented how good English, about the good English of their conversation partners. Of course, naturally, peer learning is happening, and connections that last. Students were also practicing communication skills and engaging in negotiation of meaning, because using slang, using idioms is very common for young people, and especially slang that even I don't know when students speak in the classroom sometimes. So I told my students, you have to make sure that you explain and you help understand your conversation partners. I will not read all the quotes. I would rather highlight what these quotes are about, because you can read them if you have them on your screen, and just for the sake of time. That was common for almost every student to feel anxious, to interact with somebody they don't know, somebody that they have to face on a Zoom call like we are now. But they managed that, and every student mentioned they found it to be beneficial. They learned about themselves, they learned about their partners. It improved their listening skills. They understood how listening is not hearing and how important it is to listen. They describe how actually painful it was for them to hear about the experience of Ukrainian students living, studying, but still finding joy during the times that are very challenging. And they also were learning some Ukrainian. That was surprising, but also not surprising. And surprising because I've implemented projects before with Brazil and with France. And students in reflections in previous projects have not reflected about learning Portuguese or learning French. But in this case, with virtual exchange with Ukrainian students, many learned new words. And so I really like this quote. We ended conversations with a screenshot and the word buvai, which I realized even I don't use that often. So I thought, oh my gosh, that's interesting. Could be generational, or maybe because I speak English now more. So I will now ask Olga to talk about reflections from her students. So Olga, please.
Yeah, thank you, Roxana. And for our students, it was almost the same, but from the other side, First of all, I need to say that they were also very anxious. These are the participants of the projects were second-year students. Okay, they are the students of linguistics, but for majority of them, due to the situation, it was the first experience of communication with the native speakers, let's say, and all of them were worried how to start. They study language professionally, so they were afraid of making mistakes, etc. And it was very important for them to feel this support, to be understood, to break this barrier of first communication with the Americans, with native speakers, and of course they reflected on intercultural diversity, because they shared the experience during our classes, and each of them had different representative of different cultural group, because for them to understand how multicultural USA is, they met students from different countries who of different origins, but who were born and study in the USA. Of course, they highlighted importance of understanding their daily behavioral patterns, because it was very interesting for them how things are going, ordinary and daily routine things are going in the country, and they are very eager to know about this. Of course, about worldview, because we share the same values, but representation of these values is different in different cultures, behavioral representation, linguistic representation, etc. So for them, it was also a great experience to share, to compare the worldviews, and to see that from the distance, someone will share the same feelings, the same emotions, the same motives, etc. And of course, for our students, it was incredible to feel the support in these times of war, and to talk about war. They were also afraid to talk, how to talk about war, because how to start, etc. But all of them mentioned that first meeting was, more difficult for them, but second meeting went smoothly well, and they often mentioned that they became friends after this, and continue and plan to continue communication after this project, because they found a lot of common interests that they would like to share and continue to increase. And of course, all of them reflected on the importance of such project, and they expressed gratitude for this. And they asked when we are going to meet next to continue to repeat this experience, because for them it was very very important. And next slide, if Roxanna. And of course, I will not also read all the reflections, but here are some of them. They emphasized on sharing the reality. They talked a lot about stereotypes, because all of us have some stereotypes during the when we meet representatives of different countries, and online. Even online meetings can help to clarify some of them, to openly and directly ask, is it really true about this or that, not only situation, but some case in your country or in your worldview. And so they also tell that it was unforgettable, and they want to continue. So, and if you allow me to continue, what are our insights, like from the side of the teachers? It's very important to embed virtual exchange into the educational process, not only for the students of humanities, but also for the students of engineering, because for all categories of students, it's important not only from the perspective of learning outcomes. Of course, it's very important, but from personal perspective, especially in this time of war, when students are very closed. We have generation which is very closed emotionally, because they want, a majority of them want to be strong, want to help their families, want to support. A lot of them are on the front line, etc. And for them to feel the real support from abroad, human support, personal support, soulful support, it's also very important. Not only some physical things matters, but also emotional support. And these projects like Edge or Coil, they really facilitate such connections and such feelings and support from abroad. Again, they open the world because we are right now dealing a lot with internalization at home because, again, a lot of students physically cannot leave the country or don't want to leave the country for a long time. To be honest, just from my experience, just because they don't want to leave their families, their mothers, a lot of them also work or volunteer, and they don't want to go abroad for a long time. Of course, there is some percentage for those who take the semester mobilities, etc., in Europe, but during the war, according to my statistics from from dealing with the academic mobility programs, short mobilities have become much more popular. Just because of this, and the students shared their feelings, because sometimes we ask them, why not to join semester Erasmus? No, I want to stay with my family. I want to support. And for such projects, when they can do this in their spare time, when they can communicate, can openly speak, can be open and share their emotions and get this support, it would be it's very valuable. And of course, not only emotional impact, but of course better understanding of language, better improved communication skills, and of course these projects foster tolerance and intercultural awareness of both of all the participants. Roxana?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, we know that we have limited time, but we love to talk about this project, right? So we, just to give you a little bit about, there is a lot of research on virtual exchange and how it fosters global citizenship. And I think that emotional human connection is one of the most important aspects in global citizenship education, but also in students' individual intercultural development. So our preliminary findings, because we haven't analyzed it deeply yet, reveal evidence of both growth in empathy, intercultural awareness, as well as critical global thinking. We know that they had limited opportunities to meet, but this experience, as students said, pushed me to think more critically about global issues and my role as an informed and empathetic individual. If you are planning collaboration, I encourage you definitely do it. Start with something small, seek opportunities, plan, implement, reflect. It doesn't have to be perfect because it could be very messy, but actually I'll share that of the 3 projects that I've done, France, Brazil, and Ukraine, this has been best experience. And there could be many possible reasons, just my own positionality being Ukrainian and prepping my students for this experience, but also because of the compassion that students have for Ukraine, or my students on my side for Ukraine. It was evident. They started when I told them, and I had almost everyone completing it when they had to complete the project. I didn't have to remind them about completing. And almost every single student in class, after doing their individual sharing about the project, said, thank you for this opportunity. Believe me, it doesn't happen often. So final takeaway, virtual conversations can create real, lasting students' perspectives, values, and global engagement. So we thank you so much. And I mentioned at the beginning, Penn State Global or Edge opportunity. If you are interested, you can connect, you can provide your information or share with your colleagues. It doesn't have to be in English language education. It could be for engineering, business, agriculture. In fact, we do have faculty at Penn State that are Ukrainian and very strong program in agriculture. They're often looking for collaborations with Ukrainian institutions. So thank you. And Yeah, Olga, if you can, Olga,
Thank
if
you
you
very
can provide
much.
your email. Yeah,
I will provide. I will write my email in chat. No problem.
in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was incredible experience, which really influenced our and contributed greatly to our not only educational process but also to making bridges between our countries and our people. So we are not say that it stopped. We are just going to continue, and I'm sure that we will do our best in future. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Roxana. Thank you, Olga, for sharing this incredible trauma healing, inspiring, empowering projects. Really, when the war started, we were all first desperate, right? We were lost, and then we decided to do something. Yeah, and the necessity and the will for emotional engagement, for empathy, for connection, gave birth to incredible projects like this that are about support, about resilience, about resistance, about compassion, right? And that actually flow into more things, right? About friendship, about involvement, about incredible cultural exchange where it seemed not possible at all, right? So we have all discovered new ways to connect, to share, to teach at a different level, in fact, right? And not to lose the most important thing, human communication, right? So it is all about that, right? So thank you. That was incredible story. Thank you for sharing it with us so openly, so sincerely, and so inspiringly, right? So
Thank you.
Дякую.
yes. Yeah, дякую величезне. Красно, дякую вам for supporting us. Really, it means so much. And definitely, I want to sum up today our incredible online session, one-day session. We took a lot, we created today an incredible, inspiring and supporting pool we can all draw from. And it is about emotion, it is about empathy, right? It is about ideas to boost more incredible projects like this that you have just shared us with. So together we learn, we grow, we connect, and don't forget that individually we can move stones, but together we can move mountains. Thank you, everyone who joined us today, who supported us today, who participated, who presented, and welcome to our day 2, which is actually day 1 of online convention, of offline convention, which starts tomorrow. So those who are going to Ivano-Frankivsk or who have already arrived, like me, for example, I'm enjoying the second day in Ivano-Frankivsk already. So incredible city, wonderful people, very hospitable, and fantastic atmosphere. So I'm really very grateful that we have the opportunity of not only connecting online, but also, despite all odds, connecting offline, looking into each other, hugging, kissing, right, greeting and supporting. And together we are invincible. So thank you so much. Thank you for today. And looking forward to more collaboration and seeing each other tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.